Libertarians are usually intimately familiar with the Republic of Somalia, used by anti-liberals as a poster child for the failure of small government. Go to Somalia, they say. Somalia is an interesting case study in itself, with the collapse of the Marxist dictatorship in 1991 and lack of strong central power actually leading to quite salutary outcomes. But let's look at a region of Somalia that broke free from tyranny and has maintained independence even as the centralizing state has taken power in the rest of Somalia again with the help of foreign powers. Today we're talking about Somaliland. Somaliland, a northern section of Somalia, had been separated by the British Empire from the rest of the Somali nation, which was colonized by Italy in the 1880s. The European powers replaced a patchwork of Muslim sultanates that arose in the Middle Ages. The British colonial administration was plagued by Muslim guerrilla fighters in the interior named dervishes until around 1920, and overall they stuck to the strategically important coastal towns during their rule. During World War II, Italy invaded British Somaliland, for a time integrating it into their colony before being ousted in 1941. After the war, the British, as part of the movement towards decolonization, promised Somaliland its independence, which it briefly achieved in 1960 before joining with the formerly Italian Somalia to create the Republic of Somalia. The populace of Somaliland rejected the union in a 1961 referendum 60-40, but the referendum was still approved with a majority of Somalis. Desperate, the former army of Somaliland attempted to gain independence through an abortive coup that year. Soon, Somalia would enter the period of rule by Siad Barre, a Marxist-Leninist who took power in a successful coup in 1969. Barre ruled with an iron fist, killing and starving political enemies, including a whole sub-ethnic group in Somaliland during the Isaaq genocide, where as many as 200,000 Isaaq Somalis may have been killed between 1987 and 1988. Barre divided Somali society under a system known as clanism, where the loyal major clans of Somalia were privileged over the less reliable ones. When Barre was finally overthrown by a rebellion supported by his enemy Ethiopia and made up of the enemy clans in 1991, his personality cult dissolved with the Somali communist state. During this chaos, the Somalilanders managed to break away successfully and maintain a de facto border with Somalia. Somaliland, having secured its independence, moved to create a democratic order in the country. In 2001, it passed a referendum affirming its independence, and in 2003 held its first democratic elections, with a divisive but ultimately peaceful result. Since independence, it has maintained at least partial democratic systems in place, with none of the endemic coups or revolts common in sub-Saharan Africa occurring since 1991. After droughts delayed polls twice since 2015, Somaliland has had its most recent multi-party parliamentary elections on May 31st, 2021. While the rest of Somalia has struggled with piracy and Islamic groups like al-shabaab, Somaliland is relatively much more peaceful and prosperous. Speaking of Islam, while Somaliland is a fairly conservative society, the moderate Islamists in parliament can only command about 1/3 of the power in the country, the rest being split between social democrats and centrist liberals who are far more secularist. Since this year's election, the Islamic Party and the Social Democrats have a coalition to control the parliament, while the liberals still hold the presidency, the election for which is in 2022. While officially only recognized by a handful of countries like Ethiopia and Turkey, Somaliland itself has a burgeoning trade with the rest of the world. It has also developed a working relationship with Taiwan, the two bonding over their status as, quote, unrecognized states, and they've also reached out to the libertarian microstate Liberland for the same reason, an area we will cover in the future. More prosperous and free than its alleged master Somalia, Somaliland has maintained its autonomy without any international support for 30 years. They have created one of the more stable political regimes in Africa. Somalilanders seem to have no interest in involving themselves with a dumpster fire of a state controlled largely by Ethiopian and Kenyan peacekeeping troops and assailed by political strife, while they've been hard at work minding their own business. Somalia has lately been engaged in extensive peace talks with the officially rebellious Somaliland government. Will this lead to another unpopular union? Or will Somalia finally accept reality and allow Somaliland the same privilege granted to the other, quote, recognized nations on earth? As with Bougainville, we may be on the cusp of another victory for self-determination. Let us look forward to the day that Somaliland stands with the rest of the family of nations, and may 1,000 flowers bloom